Imagine a company announces we will become net zero by 2050. Sounds impressive. But let me ask a simple question. How does the company know how much carbon it is producing today? How does it know whether emissions are increasing or decreasing? How does it know where to reduce emissions? The answer is simple. Before companies can reduce emissions, they must first measure them. And that process is called GHG Accounting. Today, I am going to explain GHG Accounting in the simplest possible way. No complex formulas, no confusing calculations. Just what it is, why it matters, how companies use it, and where sustainability professionals fit into the process. So let's move into what is GHG accounting. GHG stands for greenhouse gases. These are gases that trap heat in the atmosphere and contribute to climate change. The most common greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and several industrial gases. Now think of a company. A company tracks money, it tracks sales, it tracks expenses, it tracks assets. Similarly, companies are now required to track greenhouse gas emissions. That tracking process is called GHG accounting. In simple words, GHG accounting is the process of measuring, calculating, and reporting the greenhouse gases that are generated by an organization. So think of it as a bookkeeping, but instead of tracking money, you're tracking emissions. Why does GHG accounting matter? Many beginners ask, why should companies even care? The answer is because emissions have become a business issue. Investors want to know climate risk. Customers want sustainability products. Governments are introducing regulations. Supply chain partners are demanding carbon data. Banks increasingly consider sustainability performance. Imagine two companies producing the same product. One knows its emissions and has a reduction plan. The other does not. Which companies appear more prepared for the future? Obviously, it is first one. That is why GHG accounting has become the foundation of sustainability reporting. So let's see the most important concept in GHG accounting. Now let's understand the concept that every sustainability professional, ESG analyst, and carbon accountant must know about the emissions, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Think of them as three different cycles moving away from the company. The closer the activity is to the company, the more control the company has. The further away it is, the less control it has. Let's take a simple example. Imagine we own a biscuit manufacturing company. Every day we purchase raw materials, run machines, use electricity, transport products, and sell them across the country. Where do emissions occur? Let's find out now. Scope 1, direct emissions. Scope 1 includes emissions generated directly from the source, owned or controlled by the company. For example, the diesel used in company-owned trucks, the fuel used in boilers, diesel generators during power cuts, gas burned inside manufacturing operations. Because the company directly owns or controls these sources, the resulting emissions are classified as scope 1. So think scope 1 as emissions happening inside my boundary, which is nothing but inside the company. If the company stops burning diesel tomorrow, these emissions reduce immediately. The company has direct control. Scope 2, purchased energy emissions. Now imagine our factory uses electricity. The company does not own the power plant, but it consumes electricity generated elsewhere. So if that electricity comes from coal-fired power plants, emissions occur during power generation. Even though those emissions happen outside the factory, they occur because the factory demanded electricity. So these are scope 2 emissions. So think of scope 2 as emissions created to provide me energy. The company cannot directly control the power plant, but it can reduce scope 2 emissions by using renewable energy, purchasing green power, improving energy efficiency, installing solar systems. So next is scope 3, value chain emissions. Now we move to the largest and most difficult category, which is nothing but Scope 3 emissions. These include emissions across the entire value chain, both upstream and downstream. Upstream means before products reach the company. Downstream means after the products leave the company. For example, the wheat supplied by farmers, transportation of raw materials, business travel, employee commuting, packaging materials, product transportation, product usage, product disposal. All these activity generates emissions. The company may not own them, but the company may not directly control them. Instead, they are connected to the company's operations. So these are scope 3 emissions. And here, something that surprises many beginners is for many companies, scope 3 can represent approximately 70 to 90 or even more than 90 of total emissions. That means most emissions often occur outside the company's factory gates. This is why scope 3 reporting has become such a major focus globally. Now let's discuss another concept that beginners often miss. That is global warming potential, commonly called GWP. Many people think carbon dioxide is the only greenhouse gas. It is not. There are many greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, industrial refrigerant gases. The problem is that these gases don't warm the atmosphere equally. Some gases trap more heat than others. For example, 1 kg of methane creates significantly more warming than 1 kg of carbon dioxide. Similarly, nitrous oxide, it is even more powerful. So, how do we compare different gases? Scientists created a common unit called carbon dioxide equivalent or CO2e. Think of carbon dioxide equivalent as a common currency. Just as we convert different foreign currencies into one currency for comparison, we convert different greenhouse gases into carbon dioxide equivalent. This conversion uses global warming potential factors. Without GWP, comparing emissions would be almost impossible. So let's see a simple glimpse of how emissions are calculated. Many beginners think carbon accounting involves complicated mathematics. In reality, the logic is simple. The basic formula is activity data into emission factor is equal to emissions release. For example, suppose a company consumes 1000 liters of diesel. The activity data is 1000 liters of diesel. An emission factor tells us how much greenhouse gas is released for every liter burned. Multiply the two, you get total emissions. The same approach applies to electricity, natural gas, flights, transportation, waste generation, and hundreds of other activities. The calculations may become more detailed, but the logic remains the same. Activity data multiplied by emission factors. Today, I don't want you to remember every term. I want you to remember three ideas. First, GHG accounting is simply measuring environmental impact in a structured way. Second, most emissions fall into scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 categories. Third, different greenhouse gases have different warming impacts, which is why we use global warming potential or carbon dioxide equivalent. In the next video, we'll move from concepts to actual practice. We will learn how companies calculate their carbon footprint, where emission factors come from, how scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions are quantified, and how ESG analysts and sustainability professionals perform these calculations in real-world projects. Because understanding GHG accounting is the first step. Knowing how to calculate emissions is where sustainability becomes practical. I'll see you in the next video. For more such insights, join in our free ESG and sustainability community. Link is in the pinned comment. Thank you.